Welcome to the Untypical Parent Podcast, where doing things differently is more than okay. I'm Liz Evans and I am the Untypical OT and I am your host. I'm here to open up conversations that go beyond the stereotypical child, parent and family. This is your go-to space to find your backup team, the people who truly get it, because we were never meant to do this alone. Each week, through a mix of guest interviews and solo episodes, we'll explore a wide range of topics because every family is unique and there's no one size fits all when it comes to parenting. But before we dive in, if you're enjoying what I share and want to support the podcast, you can buy me a cuppa. You'll find all the links in the show notes. Are you ready? Come join me. Our guest today is Rebecca, otherwise known as the Chronically Resilient OT. They are a neurodivergent and chronically ill occupational therapist based in rural New Zealand. She combines her clinical knowledge and lived experience to support neurodivergent and chronically ill clients in private practice and is passionate about educating other professionals to improve care for a larger number of people. Rebecca, thank you ever so much for joining us on the podcast today. We have got Rebecca with us. She's actually on the other side of the world. I've just said good morning to her, but it's actually good evening to you. You are from New Zealand, but currently
Yep,
you are in Adelaide in Australia.
Australia. Yes.
So you have squeezed us into your time away. I don't know, time away.
It's a mostly work trip, doing some
Oh,
trainings and presenting at a occupational therapy conference.
cool. Okay. Well, you've squeezed us into your time away in Australia, and it is really nice. I was thinking about it actually before we came on. I think you are the first other OT I've had on. I don't think I've had any
Yay.
other OTs. So you're the first other OT. So I'm quite excited to have another OT on to chat to. And I'd probably say an untypical OT as well, another untypical OT, doing things slightly differently, which again makes me feel quite excited. So we're going to have a chat with Rebecca today and your online presence. So you are online and you're known as the Chronically Resilient OT.
I am.
Okay, right. I start all my podcasts, Rebecca, with a question around parents and about being a perfect parent. And what I like to ask you is, have you ever met a perfect parent?
No. I think I'm not a parent myself, and but I am a perfectionist, and I'm like that is not a helpful thing to be most of the time.
Yeah.
And the parents I've worked with, so before I was an OT, I worked in childcare centres, I did nannying and babysitting, and worked as a disability support worker. Like I've worked with a lot of parents, and when we try for perfect with anything, we are setting ourselves up for stress and failure,
Yeah.
essentially. That's not to say you don't try and do a good job, but going for perfect, what do I often say? Perfect is the enemy of done.
Yeah. I haven't heard that before.
Yeah, I think I kind of made it up.
Oh,
It's
I
it's
like
like
it.
perfect is the enemy of good, but I'm like, no, perfect is the enemy of done.
Yeah.
Like if we're going for perfect, we're not actually going to get anything done, and we're going to be very stressed about everything that we're doing at all times, and it's not a great way to live a life.
Yeah. And in the work that you've done with parents, do you kind of get this sense that there is this sense of needing to be perfect, of this kind of, I need to do more, I'm not doing enough, and somehow I've let my kids down, I should do more, be more in some way. Do you kind of hear that a lot?
I do, and it's really hard because I work with the parents I do work with are usually neurodivergent and chronically ill.
Yeah,
And so with that combo of experiences and disability, there are very real barriers to doing what they might have thought parenting was going to look like, or
absolutely.
to do the things that they see other people doing. And it is a conversation that comes up a lot in terms of, am I doing what is a good enough job? Am I failing my kid because I can't take them to the park or whatever? That's just, that's a random example, but there's lots of extra layers in being a disabled parent that comes up in my work a lot.
Yeah. And that probably leads me into the next bit, actually, Rebecca, is to kind of, can you tell us a bit about what it is that you do? So you've got your title of the Chronically Resilient OT, but what does that actually mean? What's the work that you're doing?
Yeah, so I'm chronically ill myself. And
Yeah.
by that, so when I say chronic illness, that is a really big umbrella term for things like chronic fatigue syndrome, fibromyalgia, hypermobility conditions, any any chronic illness really. They're different to what people sometimes call a chronic disease, which is more your diabetes and heart disease. So what I'm talking more about is like invisible, in air quotes, illnesses that are often really highly misunderstood, and that may not, somebody may not appear disabled on the outside, but they're dealing with a lot in their day-to-day lives. Um, and so, yeah, so that's some of my lived experience. I'm also neurodivergent. And so in my own life and being an occupational therapist, it's like, so, okay, how do I work? What type of people do I want to work with? And how do I use my lived experience to support other people? And so, yeah, so I work with adults. I only work with adults. People reach out often if I will work with their kids, and I'm like, no, but I'll work with you.
Yeah.
Um, so I only work with adults, and the way I do occupational therapy probably looks quite different to other people. I don't do wheelchair prescription and home modifications. I do a lot of values and interests and what is a meaningful life, and how are you pacing your energy over the week? How are you kind of making sure that you're not overdoing it one day so that you can actually do the things that you need to do over the week? What is important to you? How do you prioritize that? I do a lot with sensory processing as well and sensory modulation. So, how can we use sensory inputs to calm down or wake up?
Yeah.
um, and support a lot of like executive functioning, so people's planning and organizing and those kinds of things. And yeah, the parents I work with, it's like they're really struggling with sensory processing and executive functioning and working as well as parenting and balancing all the appointment needs that they might have to manage their disability, as well as being a parent. And some of them are doing it alone as well. They're single parents. That's a whole nother layer.
Yeah.
So yeah, in what I do, it'll look different for every person because that's everyone's a bit different. But generally, yeah, it really comes back to what is important to the person, what are they not doing, what do they want to be doing, and how do we get them doing more of what they want to be doing.
And that's so important, isn't it? And I think a bit like you as well, I've got chronic illnesses as well diagnosed. I'm hypermobile. You know, I've got an inflammatory arthritis. So, I've got other things. And I think I often see this link between parents that have been through probably very stressful times with their kids. And not often, I don't often mean that the kids are causing them stress. It's often the systems they're within
Mm-hmm.
causing them a lot of stress. And I think, like for me, that illness probably as a predisposition for it or whatever, but that came out much more following all that. That kind of seemed to trigger it for me. And I hear a lot of parents talk about that actually they became unwell, or this
Mm.
kind of chronic illness developed in amongst the stress around caring for their child in a world that doesn't really always fit them. And I wondered, kind of, do
Mm.
you see that a lot with the kind of the people that you're working with? Is that, where does that come from? Is it stress related?
I mean, stress is absolutely a factor. And often I also see people with trauma histories in their own
Yeah.
childhoods as well. That's another big factor. And the hormonal shifts that happen during pregnancy and after birth and after stopping breastfeeding can also
Yeah.
trigger a cascade of issues, like when our elastin changes when you're pregnant and
Yeah.
then your hips dislocate or whatever. Like there's lots of physical changes that happen in the body that something may have been dormant, or it may have been asymptomatic, so not showing symptoms. And then, yeah, with the additional stress, with hormonal changes, with maybe not being able to look after yourself,
Mm.
you know, lack of sleep, eating differently, depending on your support networks as well. Maybe you are having to continually push through and you're not able to support yourself in the same way. You're not maybe engaging in the occupations you would usually engage in because you've shifted into a parenting role. So I think, yes, stress is a factor. And it's like, I look at, as an occupational therapist yourself, we're looking at the person, their environment, and what they're doing,
Yeah.
and all the different factors that might be contributing to the development of a chronic illness, or an understanding that we've always had a chronic illness, like
Yes.
being hypermobile. You start with that one,
Yeah. Yeah.
but might not become apparent until later in life,
Yeah.
you know? So there can be so many different factors in there. And often we're not focusing on the cause.
Mm.
It sometimes that's a way to use up a lot of brain space that's not always productive. So like as an autistic person, knowing the why is quite important to me. And at the same time, if I focus too much on the why or the name, I lose sight of the trying to make the changes and do the things
Yeah.
and move forward. So yeah, often the conversation is like, okay, so you're dealing with this is huge, this is super stressful, what other supports have you got, what can we get into place, what can we outsource? That's often a big one for chronically ill parents, is do they have the means to get a cleaner or help with cooking or whatever it might be to reduce their load, even if it's just a little bit? Are there grandparents close by? And I know there's so much privilege involved in being able to pay for those supports or having access to that kind of family support. And if it's there, how can we use it? How can we make use of it? How can it support you so that you can focus on taking your kid to the park,
Yeah.
because you're not having to cook a meal every day or whatever else it might be that would save the energy from that bucket and be able to actually do the thing that's meaningful for them.
Yeah. And that's quite, it's hard, that, isn't it? I think, and that's, people don't often think that that's what OTs do. I think, like you say, they often think OTs, they work with my kids. They
Mm-hmm.
might, like you say, it might more kind of, it might be wheelchairy stuff, or it might be, orthopedics or neuro. But actually, and I do kind of, I work with parents as well, is that I do quite a lot of talking about what does that actually look like, and still parents are really tricky sometimes to work with, and I'll sit with this one as well, is that we start talking about ourselves, but we very quickly come back to what the kids need, and I have to be really, really kind of gentle but firm about, this is about you. We're going to talk about you, because I think parents will just naturally go, oh, but the kids need, and like you say, we'll power through, and then of course we get
Mm.
burnout, flares, all sorts of things. That kind of, that management of our time and our energy is so important, and OTs are really great at helping with that.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
it's hard when there's so many systemic issues in place that mean there isn't funding and there isn't
Yeah.
support, and it's then it's like, okay, well, how can we conserve energy where possible? Do you need a shower stall? You know, that's a quite simple. Do you need to shower every day? Is often a question I
Yeah,
ask
yeah,
as
yeah.
well. It's like, what are the little tweaks in the week? You know, a perching stool in the kitchen is another, often like a common one. It's like,
Mm,
go get a stool. If it helps you to sit down to prepare a meal, sit down to prepare a meal.
yeah.
Like, you know, whatever the little bits are, because, you know, with kids, you can't just shut them in a room, you know, like you've got to continue to
Yeah.
look after them, right?
Yeah, we can't do
You
that.
can't just shut
Yeah.
them in a room, right? So then it becomes, okay, so within your constraints, okay, you do have to work full time because financially that's what you need to do.
Mm,
Okay, so then what does the rest of your life look like? How do we, what drains your energy, what feeds it, and how do we get more of what feeds it and less of what drains it, but within being quite realistic about the constraints,
yeah.
right? Because that can be a really tricky conversation to have. It's like, well, you might need to let go of some of the expectations that you were brought up on. Another question I often ask people is, whose voice is that? When there's when there's that niggly voice in their head
You
going, oh,
should.
but you can't,
Yeah, yeah.
you should. I'm like, yeah, whose voice is that?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You know, it's like, people like, if you need to run the dishwasher twice, run the dishwasher twice. I know that's got an energy cost involved if you're watching your power bills, but if it's got, I mean, energy as in electricity, but then
Yeah.
the physical energy cost for you of having to wash the dishes by hand or rinse them,
Yeah.
well, how do you kind of weigh that up? And there's lots of there's a system. I don't use it very much because it's a bit too binary for me, but there's a system called energy accounting where you look at where your withdrawals are and where your deposits are for energy and how you can get your energy bank balance balancing. For me, it's tricky because things are so fluctuating. So
Yeah.
one day something might be a withdrawal, another day it's a deposit, or it might be both at the same time. And so for me, in my head, it's a bit more complicated than that. But
Yeah.
those are some useful concepts to discuss when you're kind of talking about this idea of, okay, how do we conserve some energy here so that you've got more over here,
Yeah.
and really work on that. And that idea of that we're not just looking at the day to day, we're looking at the week, we're looking at the month, we're looking at the year. How do you manage energy over an extended period?
Mm.
Because yeah, you might be able to overdo it one day, but if you try and do that every day, that'll result in a much bigger crash at the end of that. So yeah.
And it's just interesting the way you were talking about the dishwasher then, because when I do the dishwasher, it runs and then it sits in the dishwasher because I just think I haven't got this, I haven't got the energy to get it all out again. So if
But
anyone needs
do you
anything, they're
need
going,
to? Can
well,
you
this is,
just,
yeah, this is what I think. I just leave it in
yeah,
its storage. It's out of the way. The door's shut. No one can see.
right?
The kids are
It's the
going, we've
same
got
with
no clean
laundry. Like,
cups.
do you have to fold the laundry and put it
Yeah.
away? Could you have a dirty basket and a clean basket?
Yeah.
Maybe that's not the way it should. There's so many inverted air quotes
Yeah.
for those who are listening, but the way it should be done, or whatever. If that's what works for you, and that's better for your energy, so that you can actually play a game, or whatever it is that you
Yeah.
like to do, then have a dirty basket and a clean basket, and that's your washing process,
Yeah.
right? Like, there's a really great book called How to Keep House While Drowning, and she talks about a lot of these things. It's like, have a laundry basket and a rubbish bin in every room, or if something accumulates somewhere, set up a system for it where it accumulates. Don't like try and force yourself into a structure that isn't actually going to work for your brain and your body.
Yeah. Who was that, did you say? What was their name?
Her name is Casey Davis. The
Casey
book's called
Davis. Okay.
How to Keep House While Drowning is the book.
Okay, we'll put that. I'll put that in the show notes because that sounds really interesting. I think I might need that one.
It's quite a useful book. I just, the
Yeah.
caveat, she's maybe posted some slightly problematic things on Facebook
Okay.
in the last few months about neurodivergence. I don't know the whole context, but just like,
Okay.
you know, the endorsement of the book is not an endorsement of everything she says.
Okay.
Just
Yeah.
as a little
Wisely
caveat,
put,
but the
Rebecca.
book is super useful.
Yeah. Take what you need.
Yes.
Yeah. And ignore the bits that actually maybe aren't quite so helpful. Okay.
But
That's
that's not in the book itself. Those are
okay.
some separate social media things
Okay.
that,
Okay.
anyway, yeah.
And I was just thinking because I think, with what you're talking about and that kind of that pacing, isn't it? And that energy conservation, it's not easy. So it's something that we kind
Mm-mm.
of you hear people talk about and go, oh, you just need to manage your spoons. And I just think, yeah, do you know what? That's really
Yeah,
hot.
right.
It's really
What
hot.
happens when I wake up and I don't know how many spoons I'm going to have that day until I start going? Or actually, I wake up with zero spoons, but I still have to do things. Like, I'm
Yeah,
feeling like that today. I'm exhausted today, and I've got a 3-day conference Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I don't actually know how I'm going to manage that. I'm going to be negative spooning because
yeah,
I'm not recharging overnight at the moment while I'm traveling. It's been really stressful. And
yeah,
it's like, well, sometimes we do need to push through, but if we push through for too long, then we end up in burnout, which is what happened, the what kicked off, well, my kind of like chronic fatigue things. And looking back now, it was an autistic burnout, but I wouldn't have got as sick as I did if I listened to my body.
yeah,
And I kept pushing through, and I kept pushing through for like 2 years, and I wasn't listening to the early
yeah,
signals.
yeah,
And I know, again, if you're a parent, that's going to be really hard to listen to the signals when you've got to get a kid up into school and whatever it is. And it's, I'm not a morning person, and I would like to be a parent. We're hoping to be, but that's going to be a really hard part of it for me, is getting up early. My ideal wake time is 9 a.m. and
yeah.
kids don't do that. So
No,
that is going to
they really
be
don't.
no, that is going to be a really difficult thing for me to try and manage, still getting enough sleep and enough rest. And another thing I talk about is different kinds of rest as well. So sleep is not the only way that we nourish and recharge ourselves. And so then this concept of, I split it into four. There's various ways of splitting it. There's a book that splits it into seven, but I split it into cognitive, physical, spiritual, and I can never remember all four when I start listing them. Anyway, there's a resource on my website on it. But just this idea. So for me, I would used to like not have a lie down because I wasn't going to have a nap. There wasn't enough time to go to sleep. But I'm like, actually, if I lie on my bed and listen to my audiobook for half an hour, I'm still resting my
Yeah.
body. I'm resting my sensory system. I'm giving my brain a break, all of those things. But sometimes my rest needs to be movement. It
Yeah.
actually, I need to go do some gardening as my rest, which, is not how we typically think of
Mm,
rest.
mm,
But I think when you're chronically ill, it's like, well, we need to kind of fill different buckets. And sometimes that's by moving or doing something enjoyable, even if you know it's going to be an energy drain. It's like my conference this week, which will be in the past when this actually goes out. But that is a worthwhile energy drain for me,
yeah.
to have traveled here. And I get, I'm staying this week with a lovely OT who I met online last year, and we're meeting in person for the first time. And I'm
Oh,
staying in her
brilliant.
house. And it's just beautiful getting to connect with a like minded OT. And I'll get to see a bunch of them at the conference as well. And so it's like, yes, while that kind of activity is incredibly depleting in many ways, it's also
Yeah.
really nourishing in others. So we need to have quite a nuanced view of energy expenditure
Yeah.
and use and nourishment, because things can deplete and nourish at the same time.
Yeah.
And we don't always know even till we've started something like going to the supermarket. That's always depleting. That's never nourishing.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So
I
there's some
get
things.
deliveries.
Yeah. So for the depleting things, what can be outsourced?
Yeah.
Can you get your shopping delivered?
Yeah.
Whatever those things are, that if it's never going to be at all nourishing and it's not a priority for you and you can afford to outsource it,
Mm,
or you have the supports to outsource it, there's no moral failure in outsourcing it. It doesn't mean you're a bad person or a bad parent
yeah.
if you're not able to do the grocery shopping or the laundry or all of the cooking, right? That is not a moral failure. That is actually recognizing your limits. It's brave. Recognizing your limits and asking for support. That's brave.
Yeah. And do you kind of see with the parents that you work with, do you get kind of reoccurring challenges? I kind of is that typical? What's typical? I don't know. I shouldn't be even using the word typical as an untypical OT. But do you know what I mean? But kind of the parents come, and when you work with them, they've kind of got these. You kind of know what they're going to say, what might be some of the difficulties for them that you're going to go, yeah, I know this is going to come up.
Conflicting sensory needs is a really
Yep.
common one.
Yeah.
So when the parent has a different sensory profile to the child,
Yeah.
and they're trying to figure out how to compromise while also, age appropriate, the child may not have the cognitive capacity to understand that what they're doing is hurting their mother's ears,
Yes.
or their gender neutral parents' ears. You don't, you, it's a really complicated one to manage, that one, because again, kids are loud and they're messy, and that's part of play and growing up, right? So there's a wonderful OT I follow called the occupational therapist.
Yes.
I'm sure you are familiar.
Yeah.
So they post a lot of content about that. They're a parent, and they post a lot of content about the conflicting sensory needs
Yeah.
with their children and how they manage it. And NeuroWild does as well. She's a speech therapist down here in Australia. And so yeah, there are some wonderful people. Again, I work with adults, so most of the stuff I talk about, while the concepts are applicable across ages, my content is very much focused on supporting the adult. And when I'm working with a parent, I'm focused on them. I'm not focused on the child. Obviously stuff will come up. So yeah, sensory stuff would be a big one. Executive functioning is another big one. How do they manage to remember what to send to school on what day, when to pick up, drop up? Like there's so much executive functioning involved in managing a household, let alone being a parent. So that's another one. And then yeah, it's the guilt of not being able to do the things that other parents might be doing, not having the energy
Mm.
to go to a park or go to a, whatever outing it might be, but having to adapt, or not wanting to use obvious, like mobility aids is another one, and how to
Yeah.
manage using a cane or a walker or a wheelchair, and how to explain to the kid about fluctuating capacity in whatever way is age appropriate. But,
Mm.
kids know, they know that something's different, and being able to talk to them about that in an age appropriate way, about the limits and the capacity, and okay, well, let's do this, but then I'm going to need a break. Um, I've had some really interesting conversations with, I've got cousins who are quite a lot younger than me. The youngest one is maybe 12 now, but he is quite a sensory seeker, and he would um, want to climb all over me and hug me really hard. And with chronic pain, I had to have a conversation with him when he was quite little, that he couldn't do that with me. He needed to ask before he hugged, and it needed to be very gentle, and he couldn't do the rough play with
Yeah.
me. And so I couldn't meet his sensory needs in that way. He needed to do it in another way. And it was really wonderful to see both him and his sister being really respectful of that. They knew that if they hugged me, it would hurt me. And it wasn't intentional if they did do it by accident. Um, but they were able, and like from quite young, like he might have even been 4 when we started talking about this, because I've been chronically ill their whole lives.
Yeah.
And so, like, from quite young, we were able to talk about why he couldn't jump on my back, or
Yeah.
or hug me really hard and things like that. And like, so kids from quite young can learn to be respectful. And again, it's not that you're asking them to do things that aren't age appropriate, or to take on responsibilities that aren't age appropriate. Having been parentified myself, and having had to take some responsibilities for my brother from when I was about 12, like, that's not a fun time.
Mm.
So I'm not saying that at all. And we can have conversations with children about disability. I mean, we have to. It's really important that we do, about different needs and capacity and different sensory processing. But there's definitely a lot of emotional stuff that comes up. And often when I'm working with someone, I'll suggest they work with a counsellor or a psychologist as well, just for those.
Yeah.
My work does sometimes cross over, but for some of the, deeper seated trauma, deeper seated core beliefy stuff, I'm like, you need some actual psychological support with this stuff, and we'll focus on this and they'll focus on that, and we'll work on the stuff together. But yeah, shame's a big
I
one.
think that's really important. Really interestingly, I think just recently I've started to have conversations with my kids about some of the difficulties that I've had with pain relation and energy and all that kind of stuff. And I think up until just very recently, I've always hidden that from them, thinking
Mm,
I was doing them that was the right thing to do, was that they
mm,
didn't need
mm,
that burden. And I think there's quite a lot of pressure that, you shouldn't tell the kids too much, that you're the parent, you shouldn't overburden kids with all this information. And I really struggled with that. And I sat with this for a long time, not telling them.
mm.
And they're now, my boys are 13 and 15. So they're quite old now. And it's only been probably in the last 6 months, as things have become, the pain has become really difficult for me, that I've started to have those conversations with them. And like you said, kids know. They knew something was
I
wrong.
know.
They just didn't know
And
what it was. And I think I
the
made it
thing is,
worse not telling them.
that's the thing. If we don't talk about it, they'll think
Yeah.
it's them, or
Yes.
they'll think the worst.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
If they don't know what it is, they'll be like, "Oh no, are you dying?"
Yeah. That was the
Like,
first question I said when I said to them, I've got an inflammatory arthritis. My first question my son said to me, my younger one, are you going to die?
yeah,
And I'm a solo parent as well. So I think there is that kind of that worry anyway.
yeah,
But I felt
yeah,
awful. And I thought, oh, and I'm sure that must have been going through in the back of their heads. They knew something wasn't quite right. I was struggling. I wasn't moving well. I was cranky. I was upset a lot of the time. Lots of appointments at hospital. And of
yeah.
course, they had no idea. I was going, oh,
No,
I'm fine. Because
yeah.
that's what we do. We're fine.
But they
I
know
wasn't.
you're not, though. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Kids, they know. They're
Yeah,
really
they really
intuitive.
do.
It's like, like a horse, right? Like, you can't
Yeah.
be in tune with a horse when your thoughts are out somewhere else, right? They sense it. And again, like, because I work with largely neurodivergent people, it's like they know. They
Mm,
know when you're not okay. Like, if I show up to a session kind of a bit off, it's not kind of bad enough to have like called in sick and cancelled
yeah.
the set. I mean, called in sick. I'm my own boss. But to have cancelled the session, but I might give them a heads up at the start, going, "Hey, I'm a little bit more tired than usual. It's not you."
Yeah.
because it's very easy for those clients who have had a lot of negative experiences in their lives to personalize whatever tone might come out
Yeah.
accidentally, or being a little bit less patient and validating than usual, and they'd be like, what have I done? It's like, no. Or I had that when I was in my last job, when I was teaching skills classes, and I'd say at the start of a session, look, my chronic pain's much higher today. If my face looks grumpy, that's what it is. It's not because I'm grumpy with anybody. It's because I'm in a lot of pain internally. I'm okay to be here. I'm still like, I'm all right, but I am in a higher level of pain than
Yeah.
usual. And it's like, people pick that up.
Yeah.
Like I mean, I know we want to, we want to protect people from things, but at the same time, it's like, letting them know actually creates more safety, because
Yeah.
you're being authentic. And it's not that you're burdened. Obviously you need your own support so that you're not
Yes.
putting, using your kids for emotional processing.
Yeah. Yes.
Like, there are of course limits, and even the youngest of kids will know when something's off.
Yeah.
And especially when they're young and you are their safety, if they know that something's off, that is
Mm.
terrifying.
Yeah. Yeah. It would
Right. And
be.
so it's like, how can we, in an appropriate way, talk about, oh, hey, yeah, this is what chronic pain means. It means you can't give me a really big hug. We need to do hugs this way.
Yeah.
And then you can direct the stuff in a different way. Find different ways to be affectionate and to spend time together. Like, maybe you need to do more things like board games than adventure parks.
Yes. Yeah. You're
Or
not going to hang me
maybe,
upside down on one of those roller coasters ever.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, but maybe they can go to a sport and you can sit on the
Yeah.
sidelines, like, but so they can still get, because that's another conversation. It's like, what am I limiting? What access to things am I limiting for them?
Yeah.
Um, as well, can be another source of that shame. And then also, if a parent is neurodivergent and chronically ill, their kid's probably got some stuff going on as well. And so does their kid actually need some consideration for reduced activity and energy conservation as
Mhm.
well.
So in other words, as
It's
well, it's great modeling, isn't it, for our kids, is that when we model that, that actually it's not all about us hiding and masking and getting through this, that actually I can, even with our kids, we sometimes need to let them know this is what our needs are and be able to advocate for what we need. And by doing that,
exactly.
our kids then go, oh, that's okay to do. You know,
Yeah.
and we don't
I
then
can have
encourage
a
masking
need.
in our
I can,
kids.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I can have a need. I can express it, and we can figure it out a way to meet it. And it's not always easy. And of course, like, I know it's hard for, um, like, you might not want your kids to see you crying, for example. But at the same time, modeling healthy expression of emotion is really important, so that they know, okay, I can have I can express those emotions as well. I don't need to hide them.
Yeah.
If we are just hiding stuff and pushing through, all they're learning is that.
Yeah, yeah.
They're
And
learning that
emotions are
that's the
okay,
way.
aren't they? They're not nothing to be frightened of, and we have them and we recover. And the recovery bit's the really important bit is that we will recover and
Yeah,
it will be okay again. But at this moment, I'm feeling this and it's really big and it's it
yeah,
feels a bit uncomfortable and yeah, and you can see it.
yeah.
But how important is that for kids to be able to see that? I feel quite important. That's something we talk about a lot in our family,
Mm,
is about emotions, and no
mm,
emotion is wrong. We just have to kind of find a way around it. And sometimes we have to sit with it. Sometimes those emotions we do have to sit with, and they're not nice and they're
yeah,
not comfy.
yeah.
But we
And
do
sometimes we
recover.
might not do things that we're super proud of either, but then also
Yeah.
the modeling of the repair,
Yes.
right? Hey, I'm really sorry I snapped at you. I was blah, blah, blah. I'm going to do my best to
Yeah.
not do that again. Not promising that you'll never do that, going
Yeah.
back to the section stuff at the start, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's like, if there has been something, or you're like, hey, I'm really sorry. I know we plan to do this today. I don't have the capacity. Can we reschedule it too? And can we do this instead?
Yeah.
Right? Like, modeling that, all of that, right? And how we can express our needs. Hopefully the kids can learn. I mean, it's so hard within the systems as well, though, because like, we might model expressing the needs, but then they might try that at school and get shut down. And so it's like it's not a perfect system, but you know that if we can at least do that, then hopefully there's less burnout down the track for
Mhm.
everybody, parents
Yeah,
and kids,
yeah,
that we can have a cap. Like, you know, I look back at my childhood, we had a lot of pajama days at the weekends, and I'm like, that is probably because my mum was super burnt out.
yeah,
Right? It was,
yeah,
we had a lot of home and pajama days at the weekends, and it was like a fun thing,
yeah,
right? But you know, you look back on those things, it's like, that's probably because she had no energy to take us anywhere
yeah, yeah.
because she was working all
But
week.
how amazing though as well that you can create that safe space at home. And like you say, you can't, or we can't control what's going to happen when we're out in the world of work, or, the kids are at school, and the schooling system anyway. I don't know whether it's any better in New
Yeah.
Zealand, but in the UK, yeah,
Mm.
yeah. But if we can give our kids a safe space at home to be able to go through those emotions and being able to advocate for their needs in a safe way, um, as parents, I think that's the best we can do. Not being perfect, of course,
Yeah.
but
Not
the
being
best that we
perfect,
can do.
doing the best you can, and
Yeah,
modeling where you
yeah,
can, and you know, instilling those the care and the support and the validation of
yeah,
experiences.
yeah. If there was a parent listening today and they either suspect they've got a chronic illness, because I suppose that's another thing. Sometimes people don't even realise.
No.
I hadn't even touched on that. That's not even one of my questions. And I'm going to go off on a tangent in a minute, Rebecca. And if you don't worry, then pull me back. But I was just thinking, actually, when I think about it, and how long diagnosis takes.
Mm,
When I think about my EDS diagnosis, I first went to the doctors, I think, when I was 12. I'm
mm,
now in my mid-40s and have just been diagnosed with it. And I have been to doctors over and over and over and over again.
yeah.
But that's really hard too, isn't it? Is that you could be a parent, suspect or might not even know that you have a chronic illness and you are still just plowing through because it's not been picked up or
Yeah.
diagnosed or validated or acknowledged that this is what you're going through.
Mm. And the signals just have to get louder and louder. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, often a diagnosis comes after some kind of
Yeah.
health crash,
Yes.
burnout, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Things have to get really, really bad for people to listen and to stop.
Yeah. So if we've got a parent out there that maybe either suspects or knows they have a chronic illness, what would be have you got a couple of like top tips that would help? Your magic wand, of course.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I wish I had a magic wand.
Yeah. If you got a
Number
top
one
tip.
would Number one would be kinder to yourself.
Yeah.
You're doing enough. You're good enough. You're doing good enough. That's actually at the top of it. It's like if you're stuck in a critical self talk, you're adding fire to your stress. Like you're just exacerbating it. And so obviously it's difficult and it's not going to happen all the time and it's a practice, but self compassion,
Yeah.
it's being like, hey, actually, this is really hard right now. Other people in my situation would find this really hard too. And I'm going to do my best to get through it.
Yeah. And I often find those parents, the ones that question, are the ones that are doing a really great job.
Right?
Yeah, it's the ones that aren't questioning and going, I'm great, that you're thinking, oh, crikey. But actually,
Yeah.
those ones are notoriously doing really, really well. But
Yeah.
they give themselves such a hard time and are questioning
Yeah.
all the time, is this good
Yeah.
enough? Am I good enough? Should be doing more. Everyone else is doing better than me. And, again, I'm going to go into the social media kind of stuff that there is this perfect image of what a family looks like. Well, I went
Mm,
on my holidays. I never saw one of those families when I was on holiday.
right.
They don't
Yeah.
exist.
Yeah.
But
So
there
yeah,
is
that
this,
would be my top one is self-compassion.
yeah,
Just being kinder to yourself. And it's not an easy thing to do. I say it and I'm, you know, it's an ongoing work in progress, but it's really important. Um, and then I guess number two would be outsource, get support
yeah,
where you can. And I know there's constraints around that. Our funding systems mostly suck.
yeah, they do.
Anywhere, wherever you are in the world, mostly there's not enough. But whatever there is, if it's available to you, outsource what you can. And
Mhm.
reducing the expectations isn't what I mean, but changing your priorities. You
Yeah,
know, like, are your kids happy, healthy, and fed? Well, then does it matter that there's a, you know, 3 loads full of laundry waiting to be done. Not really.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, it's like, yeah, what are you prioritizing and how can you change what you're expecting of
Yeah.
yourself?
And it is that help thing, isn't it? I think I did a podcast, like a solo podcast a little while ago, just about accepting help. Um, because sometimes there is the issue where we can't always get help. I know that that's hard, but sometimes people are offering help, but we don't accept the help. And I got
Mm,
into this, I was talking about it in my podcast, is that there's almost, I feel like there's this transaction with help, that if somebody helps me, I have to be able to help them back. And if I can't, I have to say no.
mm,
And when you're in the thick of it and in crisis or in flare or whatever you're in, and you're finding life really difficult, the thought of being able to help somebody else is just too much. I can't even do what I'm doing, let alone help someone
mm.
else.
Yeah.
That then being able to accept that help. But I was talking about actually some people need to be able to help us. Sometimes we need to let other people help because it does bring a connection with people, being
Yeah.
able to
And
help somebody else.
they wouldn't be offering if they didn't want to. I think that's the other really tricky thing is that, and also like help is not always obviously directly reciprocal
Yeah.
as well. Like if
Yeah.
somebody helps you physically, maybe there's a way you help them emotionally,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
right? It doesn't mean that they come and clean your house and you have to go clean theirs, right? It's not that transactional. And so trying to, the ways that I've struggled with this a lot in the last, God, how many years has it been? Like 13, 15 years of chronic illness so far. Um, but that I do still contribute. It looks different,
Yeah.
but I do
Yeah.
still contribute to my household, right? Um, so find, yeah, if you are in the thick of a flare, you don't need to, it's getting away from that transactional belief
Yes.
and that all that it needs to happen straight away. Maybe somebody helps you and you help them 5 years down the track when
Yeah.
you've actually got more capacity to do that. So I think again, it's not a moral failing to accept help either. It's not that you aren't doing enough. It's like if somebody's offering to help, it's because they want to,
Yeah.
and it's their responsibility to watch their own capacity as well.
Yes.
Because
Yes.
sometimes we
Yeah.
we get we get nervous that it's like, oh God, am I being too much? And it's like, well, actually, that's the other person's
Yeah.
responsibility to let you know when it's too much.
Yeah.
Um, and so yeah, the self-compassion, outsourcing, and finding things that you can do and that you can do with your kids and that is going to look different, right? And that doesn't make it bad.
Yeah.
I
I
think
love
that would be the third thing is
that. Is,
is finding what it is that you enjoy together that
yeah.
is within your physical, emotional, cognitive
Yeah.
capacity, um, and prioritizing that
Yeah. And those are
rather
often the
than
first things that go, aren't they? The things that we enjoy,
yeah,
and bring us joy, and those are the first things to go. And we stick with, I've got to do the washing or the cleaning or all that kind of stuff. And actually, like you say, like when you're describing 3 loads of washing, it sounds like my downstairs kitchen at the moment. But but what does that matter? No one sees that, apart from the kids when they're
and
trying to get to certain
that's
things. But
that's not what they're going to remember though,
no,
right?
no,
They're not going to remember that there were 3 loads of washing. They're going to remember that you played a board game together or that you watched a movie together. And again, I'm kind of talking about like lower energy activities.
yes,
Some people that's not the case and they actually do need to move a lot to support their chronic illness.
hmm,
But yeah, finding those things that you can do as a family
yeah,
and and really, figuring out how to prioritize those in your energy expenditure over the week, even if it might be in really short bursts. Is there a puzzle on the dining table that you work on together for 5 minutes a night?
yeah,
It doesn't have to be a big thing, right? I think sometimes we also get stuck, and this is another thing as an OT that I do about breaking things down for
yeah,
people. It's like, okay, so you want to do this thing. How about we start down here? It's not a lesser thing, but how about we kind of build the capacity for whatever it is that you want to do? So, if you're unable to sit at the table for more than 5 minutes, well, that's what you can do. And so then that's the activity limitation that you're working within. And so,
Yeah.
okay, I'm going to do a puzzle for 5 minutes. That might not be your capacity limitation forever. But if you're trying to go to a, I don't know, football game where it's going to be super loud and you have to walk and it's crowds and it's hot and the food's no good for allergies, that's not a thing for you to be doing. If you've got a kid who's into footy, get somebody else to take them, watch a game on the telly. Like, there's other ways to
Mm.
access the thing. You don't have to deprive your child of their interest. Is finding other ways, and then finding the bits of it that you can do together.
Mm. And that's what's great about being an OT, isn't it? That's what made me go, that's what OT is all about.
Yeah, thinking outside the box and getting creative. It's like, yeah,
This is it.
if you can't go to a football game, how else can you access that?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
I think even
there
people
are
just,
other ways to access that.
yeah, if you're ever confused about what OT is, that little bit at the end there is just that sums it up. That is OT. That's what we do. That's what makes it so great. Just coming towards the end, I'm just thinking about um if people were kind of interested in what you're doing, obviously I'll put all of Rebecca's contacts, your socials, all that kind of thing, your website. I'll put all those in the show notes so they can find you and they can get in contact with you. But if you've got anything coming up at the moment in the not so distant future that are kind of people might be interested in, or anything you wanted to talk about at the end?
So I've been largely focused on getting to this conference. I have got some training stuff coming up later in the year on exploring values. It's targeted mostly at health professionals for
Okay.
one of them's like a standalone webinar in July, and then later in the year there's a series of webinars which kind of teaches you the method that I've been using to do values work with people.
Mhm.
So those are so far my planned ones. I'm hoping to get some on-demand content up. I do training on sensory processing and neurodiversity affirming practice for mental health, and I'm hoping to get some of that up on demand. Not up yet.
You've
Again, spoons depending. That
and
will go up at some
you,
point.
you've got some downloads and things on your website, haven't you? Yeah,
I do,
they're
yeah.
brilliant.
So I've got a range of worksheets and
Yeah.
graphics that are on my website. Some of them are free, other ones are paid. There's also a bunch of blogs that are all free. If I talk about adapting sleep hygiene, different kinds of rest. There's quite a lot on sensory processing. There's some stuff on values. So all the kind of topics that I care deeply about and do a lot of in my work. There's resources there. Um, and yeah, so I'm most active on Facebook. I'm not on the other socials. It's just too much
Yeah,
energy
I
capacity
hear
for
you.
that.
Yep.
Yep. And so I work as an OT. I work in Australia and New Zealand. I'm pretty full. I had to close my books for most of this year, and they're just open, but I'll probably have to close them again almost straight away. But I am looking at doing a bit more in the mentoring and supervision space as well as I move further into the year. Is trying to find different ways to keep working within my capacity
Yeah.
and and still supporting other health professionals is something that I really love to do. So,
Amazing.
but yeah, hopefully there's a bunch on my website that people find really useful. I share like my Facebook page. I'll share stuff that I've created haphazardly whenever it gets created.
Hmm.
Um, and I share a lot about my own lived experience and how I'm kind of managing my life as well. So,
Brilliant. And that makes
yeah,
such a difference, doesn't it, when we can hear from people that actually are living it rather than just being told this is what you need to do.
oh yeah, none
When
of
you
what I talk about is theoretical.
you're
It's
living
sure
it.
I might have learned the term pacing, but I learned the term pacing from going through my own program, my own fatigue and pain management programs for myself.
Yes.
It was something that I learned before I even went to uni to be an OT. So, yeah, these are
Makes
not
such a
just
difference.
arbitrary theoretical concepts to me. These are my daily lived experience
Yeah. Yeah.
in managing stuff. And that is what people come to me for. They want they want an OT, but they also want the lived experience
Makes
piece.
such a difference. Such a difference.
Yeah.
Rebecca, thank you ever so much for coming on. It's nice to talk OT. It's so
I know,
nice
right?
to talk OT on. But thank you ever so much for coming on. There might be Rebecca coming back in another kind of conversation further down the line. We'll keep you posted on that one. But it just leaves me to say thank you ever so much for coming on. I really appreciate it, and I'm sure the listeners listening in will have appreciated listening and thinking about chronic illness and parenting. And all your wealth of experience and knowledge. So thank you ever so much.
Thanks for having me. It's always fun to chat about what I love to do.
Yeah. Thank you for listening and choosing to spend your time with me today. If you enjoyed this episode, please do share it with a friend who might just feel reassured to know that they aren't on their own. And if you've got a moment, a quick rating or a review helps others to find the podcast too. If you want to stay in the loop with the podcast updates and all things Untypical OT, just drop me an email and I'd be really happy to add you to the list. Take care, and I'll see you soon.